There are moments in this industry when the curtain slips, not because someone planned it, not because someone wanted the world to see behind it, but because somebody somewhere in the machine moved too fast and pressed the wrong button. And what happened in the early hours of May 26th was exactly that. A curtain slip so clean, so accidental, so perfectly timed that if you blinked, you missed it entirely. But we did not blink. We caught it. We screenshotted it. We recorded it. And what it revealed is something so calculated, so coordinated, and so deliberately hidden from the public that it changes the entire way you should be looking at what Drake is doing right now. This is not just about a music video. This is not just about California. This is about a system, a media machine built specifically to rewrite reality in real time. And tonight, we are pulling it apart piece by piece. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now. Because the level of detail we break things down to on this channel is not something you're going to find just anywhere. And trust me, you are going to want to be here for where this story goes. Now, let us get into it. Let us start with the timeline, because the timeline is everything. At approximately midnight Eastern Time on May 26, something was posted. Multiple pages. Pages that have a very well-documented and very visible history of running narratives that benefit Drake began publishing what appeared to be a leak. The leak showed Drake in California, filming a music video on the West Coast. The same West Coast that, in the context of hip-hop culture and everything that went down between him and Kendrick Lamar, he had not been publicly associated with in nearly 2 years. Now that alone would be a story. But what happened next is what makes this genuinely extraordinary. Within minutes, not hours, not days, those posts disappeared. Quietly. Cleanly. Like they never existed. No explanation. No edit. No correction. Just gone. The pages that posted them went silent. And if you did not happen to be awake at midnight watching these accounts, you would have had absolutely no idea any of this ever happened. But screenshots exist. Screen recordings exist. And the digital trail of what went up and what came down tells a story that these people clearly were not ready for the public to piece together. Here is what makes this more than just a deleted Instagram post. When a single fan page posts something and takes it down, that is nothing. That happens every day. But when multiple accounts that are known to operate in coordination with each other, accounts that have proven track records of running Drake-positive narratives, all post the same content at the same time and all delete it within the same narrow window, that is not an accident. That is a campaign. And someone pulled the emergency brake on that campaign before it gained the traction they originally intended it to have. The question that should be sitting heavy on every single one of your minds right now is this. Why? Why would Drake's own media machine leak something about Drake being in California and then immediately try to bury it? Before we answer that, let us talk about what was actually in the leak. Because there is one specific detail buried inside this footage that most people completely glossed over, and it is the kind of detail that, once you understand it, changes the entire meaning of what Drake is trying to communicate. In the video, Drake is wearing a Joe Burrow jersey. Now on the surface, that might seem completely random. A guy wearing a football jersey. So what? But here is the context that transforms it into something far more deliberate. Joe Burrow was the quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals during the 2022 Super Bowl. That Super Bowl was played at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. And at that very same event, Kendrick Lamar performed one of the most iconic halftime shows in recent memory, surrounded by Dr. Dre, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Mary J. Blige, and 50 Cent. It was the moment the entire world was reminded just how deeply Kendrick belongs to that culture, that coast, and that era of hip-hop. Drake wearing that jersey while filming in California is not casual. Nothing Drake does right now is casual. Everything is a message, a symbol, a psychological operation. He is standing on Kendrick's turf, wearing a jersey tied to the exact moment Kendrick's legacy was cemented on the biggest stage in American entertainment, and he is filming a music video there. That is not coincidence. That is a declaration. It is a deeply calculated piece of imagery designed to say, I am not afraid of what happened. I am not intimidated by where you come from. And I am willing to walk directly into the space you occupy just to prove that I can. The audacity of that alone deserves to be examined for exactly what it is. Not bravery. not confidence. Arrogance built on a false foundation, and we're going to explain exactly how false that foundation really is. Now here is where the story gets layers on top of layers. Because the California video was not the only narrative running on that same night. In those same 24 hours, completely separate Drake-aligned pages were also spreading an entirely different story. This one claimed that Drake was on the verge of suing his label, Universal Music Group, because they were allegedly forcing him to submit his new albums to the Grammy Awards, and that the Recording Academy had personally reached out to beg Drake's team to participate. Now read that back slowly. The Recording Academy, in May of 2026, was supposedly begging Drake to submit music for the 2027 Grammys. Think about how structurally ridiculous that is for even 30 seconds. Award submissions for something happening over a year away, and somehow this urgent emergency contact was being made right now, in this moment, to be reported on these exact pages on this exact night. The story was designed to do one very specific thing: reinforce the character Drake is playing on his Iceman album. It was narrative infrastructure. If you listen to Iceman and pay attention to the themes Drake is leaning into, the idea that the system is working against him, that the industry has turned on him, that he is somehow a rogue figure fighting corrupt institutions, then a story like this one fits perfectly into that mythology. It makes the character feel real. It gives the fan something to point to and say, see, the Grammys are coming for him too. He is right. The problem is that it was fake. And the people running it got exposed so fast and so publicly that they had no choice but to pull it down and pretend it never happened. But here is what that tells us. Both stories, the real California footage and the fake Grammy narrative, were running simultaneously through the same network of pages on the same night with the same goal: to manufacture a version of Drake that does not fully exist in reality. To build a myth around a man whose actual music and actual cultural standing cannot hold the weight of the myth he needs people to believe. And when one story got too hot and the other got too fake, they pulled both plugs. Same hands. Same machine. Same coordinated silence. Let us talk about the machine itself for a moment, because understanding how it works is the only way to fully grasp how deep this goes. There is an ecosystem of pages, personalities, and media figures that operate in clear alignment with Drake's interests. Some of them are genuine fans who have slowly been integrated into something more transactional. Some of them are straight-up paid operatives who receive direction and benefit from proximity to the Drake brand. And then there are the big names, the personalities with actual audiences, actual credibility, or at least the appearance of it, who have chosen a side so publicly and so completely that their entire brand is now dependent on Drake's survival as a cultural force. When you see a story drop on one account and then immediately appear on 3 others within the same 15-minute window, that is not organic interest. That is a brief. That is a group chat. That is someone saying, post this now, and everyone executing on cue. And when they all delete it in the same 15-minute window, that is someone saying abort and everyone scrambling. The fact that we caught both the deployment and the retreat is what makes this moment so significant. Because normally, these operations are invisible. Normally, the coordination is clean enough that you only ever see the final polished story, never the machinery behind it. This time, someone moved sloppily. Someone jumped the gun. And what got exposed is not just a deleted post. It is a glimpse into how the entire operation functions. And if you are watching this and thinking that maybe you are overthinking it, that maybe these are just fan pages being fan pages, I want you to hold on to that thought. Because we are about to get to the part of this story that makes the casual explanation completely impossible to hold on to. Think about what happened with Drake's streaming numbers when Iceman dropped. There was a story, reported widely, spread enthusiastically by these same pages, about how massive his debut numbers were. The story was picked up by Billboard. It was treated as fact. Except the foundational data underpinning it had been inflated. The original source of the numbers was not accurate, and yet by the time anyone looked critically at the baseline claim, it had already been repeated so many times across so many platforms that it became the accepted narrative. Drake debuted huge. Everyone said so. Billboard said so. The internet said so. The fact that the first domino was knocked over by a compromised source became invisible under the avalanche of reposts. That is not a bug in the machine. That is the machine functioning exactly as designed. You plan a story. You get it repeated. You get a credible outlet to pick it up without doing their own verification. And now you have manufactured legitimacy out of manufactured data. The feedback loop runs itself. And the people doing the original planting never have to be held responsible because by the time anyone traces it back, the story is already cemented in public perception. This is not some elaborate conspiracy theory. This is how modern media manipulation works. And Drake, or whoever is running his narrative strategy, has become remarkably fluent in it. Okay, you have been locked in this whole time, and that genuinely matters more than you know. If this story is opening your eyes to the layers underneath what you thought was just a rap beef, hit that like button right now, and subscribe if you have not already. The work that goes into documenting these patterns and connecting these dots takes real time, and the only way this channel keeps doing it is if you are here supporting it. Now, let us keep going because we are just getting to the most interesting part. Here is the deeper question that all of this raises, and it is one that does not get asked often enough. What does it mean that Drake needs all of this? Not just the paid pages, not just the coordinated stories, but the entire infrastructure of manufactured perception that has been assembled around him at this point in his career. Because if the music was doing what music is supposed to do, if it was connecting, resonating, commanding respect organically, none of this scaffolding would be necessary. Great art does not require a PR machine to tell people it is great. It announces itself. And to be clear, Iceman is not a terrible album. There is genuine craft in parts of it. The production has more ambition than we have heard from Drake in a while. The song structures show someone who still has technical ability at his disposal. But here is the fundamental problem that no amount of coordinated media coverage can solve. The authenticity gap is enormous. Drake is performing a character on this album. He is playing a version of himself that the audience is supposed to believe is embattled, dangerous, wronged, and resurgent. The character is called Iceman, and the entire album asks you to accept that this character is real. But we know too much about who Drake actually is to accept that premise at face value. We have watched him respond to genuine competition by retreating. We have watched him use underhanded tactics when confronted directly. We have watched the narrative around him shift violently every time the cultural tide turned against him. And now we are watching a California music video get leaked and deleted while fake Grammy stories run in parallel, all to make the Iceman character feel legitimate. The art cannot carry the myth alone. So they're outsourcing the myth-making to a media apparatus. And it is working on the people who want it to work, which, unfortunately, is still a lot of people. Let us get into the California situation more specifically, because there are two very different explanations for why that footage got pulled, and both of them are fascinating in completely different ways. The first explanation is the simple one. Drake is working on something new, potentially something that falls outside the Iceman project entirely, something that sources suggest could be building toward what would become Scary Hours 4, and he does not want the reveal to happen on someone else's terms through a leaked midnight post. He wants control of the rollout. He wants the moment to land the way he choreographs it. And someone in his camp broke protocol by sending the brief too early or to the wrong people. The footage got out, the signal went out to delete it, and now they are resetting the reveal for when he is ready. That explanation is entirely plausible. And if it is true, then what we are looking at is a glimpse of Drake's next move before he wanted anyone to see it. He is filming in California. He is working on something heavier. He is preparing to escalate. And the direction of that escalation, given everything he has been rapping about, given every coded message in Iceman, given the Joe Burrow jersey in Kendrick's backyard, is pointed directly at one person. The second explanation is more interesting and considerably more uncomfortable for Drake's narrative. What if the stories were pulled not because they revealed too much too soon, but because something went wrong in California? What if Drake's return to the West Coast did not go the way his team planned? What if there was friction, a confrontation, some consequence for the kind of culture-disrespecting behavior that has defined his posture for the past 2 years, and the decision was made to go dark rather than explain a story that does not end with Drake looking powerful? Because here's the thing about the way they deleted those posts. The speed and the completeness of the deletion is unusual even for this machine. Usually when they pull something back, there is a pivot. They replace the story with something else. They redirect attention. They run a counter-narrative. This time, they just went quiet. All of them. At once. Quiet is not their default setting. Quiet means something happened that they do not yet have the spin for. Now let us zoom out completely and talk about what this all means on the level of culture, because this is where the conversation becomes genuinely important. Drake spent years being the dominant gravitational force in hip-hop. Everything orbited around him. Collaborations, feuds, trends, chart behavior, all of it bent in the direction of wherever Drake was standing. And while that era produced commercial success on a scale that very few artists in any genre have ever achieved, it also did something corrosive to the ecosystem around it. It created a generation of so-called rap fans whose entire reference point for the genre was Drake's version of it. The dance trends, the meme-friendly hooks, the absence of genuine lyrical confrontation, the chart mathematics treated as a proxy for artistic greatness. And when Kendrick Lamar stepped forward and dismantled that version of hip-hop's pecking order, not just in the beef, but in the culture, in the Super Bowl performance, in the Grammy sweep, in the way the entire conversation shifted, the people who had only ever known the Drake era felt genuinely lost. Because their idol had not just lost a rap battle. He had been exposed as someone who had been operating at the center of a culture he never truly understood. And rather than reckon with that honestly, a significant portion of those fans doubled down. They became the market for the Iceman narrative. They became the audience for the fake Grammy stories and the coordinated midnight posts. They became the demand that the machine was built to supply. Drake is not making this album for the culture. He is making it for those specific fans. And the media machine is not trying to convince hip-hop that Drake is back. It is trying to convince Drake fans that hip-hop was wrong. Those are two completely different operations. And understanding that distinction is what makes everything, the California video, the deleted posts, the inflated streaming numbers, the fake stories, fall into perfect, disturbing clarity. Here is something else worth sitting with. The pages that ran these stories are not fringe accounts. Some of them are among the largest hip-hop media properties on the internet. They have follower counts in the millions. They are treated as legitimate sources by people who follow the genre casually. And when these outlets run stories, even stories that are false, even stories that are planted, even stories that get quietly deleted after 15 minutes, there is a window of time, however brief, in which those stories exist as fact in the public consciousness. Screenshots get taken. They get reshared. The deletion does not reach everyone the screenshot did. And so even failed narrative operations leave residue. Even the botched stories contribute to the ambient sense that Drake is more culturally relevant, more feared, more in motion than the actual evidence supports. This is information warfare applied to celebrity image management. And it is being practiced at a level of sophistication that the hip-hop media ecosystem was simply not designed to counter. Because hip-hop media grew up in a culture that valued speed over verification, hype over accuracy, access over independence. The people running this machine did not create those vulnerabilities. They simply learned how to exploit them better than anyone who came before. So, where does this leave us? Where does all of this go? If Drake is genuinely building towards Scary Hours 4, and the California filming, the level of activity, the energy around the Iceman era all suggest he is building towards something, then we are about to enter a new phase of the story. And that new phase is going to be sharper, more aggressive, more deliberately aimed at specific targets than anything on Iceman. Because Scary Hours is a different register for Drake. It is the setting where he performs at peak intensity, where the production matches the stakes, where the writing has to be tight because the moment demands it. And here is why that is actually more concerning than exciting for Drake's long-term standing. Because when you go into Scary Hours mode and your primary target is Kendrick Lamar, a man who just performed at the Super Bowl to universal acclaim, who released an album that swept the Grammys, who has spent the last year doing exactly what great artists do when they win, which is grow, you are not the underdog in that story. You are the antagonist who cannot accept the outcome. You are the person who keeps poking at someone who has clearly moved on and clearly moved up. And every poke, every diss, every symbolic jersey choice in a California music video just reinforces the narrative that Kendrick defined in the beef. That Drake is obsessed, that Drake is reactive, and that Drake's entire sense of self is dependent on a competition that the other side already considers closed. The irony is that the more Drake does, the more he proves the point that was made about him. And his fans, the ones cheering for Scary Hours 4, the ones celebrating every coordinated media story, the ones defending every deleted post, they are cheering for a man who is doing the thing that people who lose do. They are calling it a comeback. But watching someone this closely with this much hunger and this much desperation is not the behavior of someone who won. It is the behavior of someone who cannot stop replaying the moment they lost. Before we close, let us talk about what you should actually be watching for in the coming weeks. Because the situation is still developing and there are open threads here that are going to resolve one way or another relatively soon. First, watch how the California footage re-enters the conversation. If Drake's team is resetting the rollout for a bigger moment, there will be a deliberate reveal, a trailer, a visual, something designed to reframe the California presence as a triumphant return rather than a leaked accident. How they package it will tell you a great deal about what the strategy is. Second, watch the feeder pages. After getting burned twice in 24 hours, once with the fake Grammy story and once with the premature California leak, there is going to be either a recalibration of how they operate or an overcorrection where they go quiet for too long. Either behavior is informative. The machine cannot function in silence, so watch for when it comes back online and what the first story they push looks like. Third, and most importantly, watch Kendrick. Not because he owes anyone a response, not because he needs to do anything, but because every time Drake escalates, every time the machine runs a cycle, every time there is a new message encoded in a jersey or a filming location or a coordinated media push, it is all ultimately pointed at one address. And whether or not that address answers back will define the shape of this entire next chapter. Now, before I bring this home, I want to say something directly. If you have been watching this situation unfold and you have been feeling frustrated, not just at the manipulation but at the fact that it seems to be working on people who should know better, you are not wrong to feel that way. It is genuinely frustrating to watch the culture that raised us on authenticity and accountability get played by a system that treats both of those values as inconveniences. It is frustrating to watch major media figures choose access and money over integrity. It is frustrating to see fake stories become real headlines because the machine moved faster than the truth could. But here is the other side of that. The fact that we are talking about this, that the screenshots exist, that the screen recordings exist, that these patterns are being documented and analyzed and discussed in the open, means the machine is not invisible anymore. The effectiveness of information warfare depends almost entirely on the target not knowing it is happening. Once people start seeing the coordination, once they start tracing the timestamps, once they start asking why 3 pages posted the same content at midnight and deleted it by 12:15, the operation loses power. Not immediately. Not completely. But the erosion starts the moment the curtain slips. And tonight, the curtain slipped. And we saw exactly what is behind it. That is going to do it for this one. And I need you to understand something before you click away. This channel exists because people like you show up, stay locked in, and refuse to let the machine run without scrutiny. If this breakdown gave you clarity, if it gave you something to think about, if it connected dots you had been trying to connect on your own, then do something simple for me. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Leave a comment with what you think actually happened in California because I genuinely want to know what you believe. Whether Drake pulled those posts because something went wrong or because he is protecting a bigger reveal. That conversation matters and your perspective on it matters. Because here is the final thought I want to leave you with. Drake is spending enormous energy, financial energy, creative energy, narrative energy, trying to convince the world that he is still the most important figure in hip-hop. And the tragic part is that all of that energy, every deleted post, every coordinated story, every symbolic jersey in a music video filmed in someone else's city, all of it only exists because of one man. Because one artist on one record at one specific moment in time said enough and meant it. Everything Drake is doing right now is a reaction. Everything he is building is a response. Every move he makes is in the shadow of something that already happened and already ended. And the saddest part? The fans celebrating it do not see it. They think they are watching someone rise. They are watching someone who cannot stop falling and keeps calling it flight. The Iceman is not rising. He is just refusing to acknowledge the temperature of the room he is standing in. And that room, as everyone paying attention already knows, has been getting warmer for a very long time. We will see what comes out of California. We will see what Scary Hours for looks like if it is real. We will see how long the machine can keep running stories before the audience stops believing them entirely. But one thing is already certain. Whatever Drake does next, he will do it with Kendrick Lamar on his mind. And that, more than any streaming number or Grammy submission or deleted midnight post, tells you everything you need to know about who actually won.